Dr. Kalen Vorthak stared at the strange metal object on his examination table. His four eyes blinked in sequence as he tried to understand what he was looking at. The human artifact was covered in sharp spikes that curved backward like metal, thorns. Each spike was designed to catch and tear flesh as it was pulled out. "What is the purpose of this weapon?" he asked his assistant, Dr. Mira Zelen. She was checking the data files that came with the recovered human military equipment. "According to the records, they called it barbed wire," Mira said. Her voice carried the musical tone of her species, but today it sounded troubled. "Humans stretched it between posts to stop enemy soldiers from advancing." Kalen picked up his scanner and ran it over the wire. The readings showed that the metal was common steel, nothing special about its composition. But the design made him feel sick. "This is not meant to kill quickly," he said. "Look at these barbs. They are positioned to cause maximum pain as they tear through skin and muscle." Mira nodded slowly. The humans could have made a simple wall or barrier. Instead, they chose to make something that would hurt anyone who touched it. The research. Vessel Harmony's Edge drifted silently through space as the two alien scientists continued their work. They were part of a special team assigned to study human military technology. The Galactic Council wanted to understand how humans fought their wars before allowing them full membership in the galactic community. So far, the findings were disturbing. Kalen moved to the next table where another human weapon waited. This one was black and cylindrical with a trigger mechanism. According to the files, humans called it a flamethrower. The weapon shot streams of burning liquid that stuck to whatever it touched and continued burning. "Dr. Vorthak," came a voice from the laboratory entrance. "Commander Brooks is here to see you." Lisa Brooks walked into the lab wearing the standard uniform of a human liaison officer. She was tall and lean with short brown hair and green eyes that seemed to notice everything. The other species in the Galactic Council had learned to read human expressions, and right now Brooks looked uncomfortable. "Commander," Kalen said with a polite nod, "we are examining your species' military equipment as requested by the Council." Brooks looked at the flamethrower on the table. Her jaw tightened slightly. "I see you found some of our more controversial weapons." "Controversial?" Mira asked. "What does this word mean in your language?" "It means that even humans argued about whether these weapons should be used," Brooks explained. "Many of our people believed they were too cruel for warfare." Kalen felt a chill run through his body. "Your own species considered these weapons too cruel, yet you still made them?" Brooks was quiet for a moment. "War brings out both the best and worst in humans. We're capable of great kindness and terrible cruelty, sometimes within the same person." The alien scientist made notes on his tablet. No other species in the galaxy had ever described themselves this way. Most species were either naturally peaceful or naturally aggressive. Humans seemed to be both at the same time. "Commander, may I ask you something?" Kalen said. "Why did your people design weapons like this barbed wire? A simple energy barrier would be much more effective at stopping enemies." Brooks walked over to examine the wire. "Because we wanted them to be afraid," she said quietly. "If enemy soldiers knew that trying to cross our barriers would be extremely painful, many would choose not to try. The fear of pain was often more effective than the pain itself." Mira and Kalen exchanged glances. Using fear as a weapon was a concept that most galactic species found difficult to understand. In their wars, which were rare, the goal was always to disable the enemy as quickly and efficiently as possible. "Let me show you something else," Brooks said. She led them to a display case containing what looked like small metal balls. "These are cluster bombs. When they explode, they scatter hundreds of smaller explosives over a wide area." Kalen studied the devices. "Are they designed to destroy military equipment?" "No," Brooks said. "They're designed to kill and wound as many people as possible. The smaller explosives are specifically made to create injuries that require medical attention rather than causing instant death." "I do not understand," Mira said. "Why would you want to wound rather than kill?" "Because a wounded soldier requires 2 or 3 other soldiers to carry him to safety and provide medical care. It removes more enemies from the battle than simply killing one person." The two alien scientists stared at Brooks in silence. The logic was perfectly sound from a military perspective, but the coldness of it was shocking. Humans had calculated exactly how to maximize suffering in order to gain tactical advantages. Kalen began to realize that they were not just studying human weapons. They were studying a completely different way of thinking about conflict. Every other species in the galaxy fought to win battles. Humans fought to break their enemy's will to fight. "Commander," Kalen said carefully, "how long did your species wage war like this?" "Thousands of years," Brooks replied. "From the time we discovered fire until we developed space travel, war was a constant part of human civilization. And during all this time, your weapons became more sophisticated at causing suffering?" Brooks looked uncomfortable again. "Yes. We studied pain and fear the same way we studied physics and chemistry. We learned how to use them as tools." That evening, after Brooks had left, Kalen sat in his quarters writing his preliminary report. The more he learned about human warfare, the more concerned he became. Every other species in the galaxy had evolved beyond primitive violence as they developed technology. Humans had evolved their violence along with their technology. He began to wonder if the Galactic Council had made a mistake in considering humans for membership. Perhaps some species were simply too dangerous to be trusted with galactic civilization. But what worried him most was a growing suspicion that humans had not really given up their old ways of thinking about conflict. They might have stopped fighting each other, but that did not mean they had stopped thinking like warriors. As he worked late into the night, Kalen began what would become the most classified document in galactic history. He titled it Preliminary Observations on Human Warfare Psychology. He had no idea that his report would soon change how every species in the galaxy viewed the seemingly peaceful humans among them. Dr. Kalen Vorthak spent 3 days reviewing human historical records before he found something that made him call for an emergency meeting. His assistant, Dr. Mira Zellin, arrived first, followed by Commander Lisa Brooks and Captain Danny Rodriguez, a human military historian who had been assigned to help with the research. "I need you to explain something to me," Kalen said without greeting anyone. He activated a holographic display that showed images from human history. "These are weapons from your ancient times, correct?" The first image showed a wooden club with metal spikes driven through it. The spikes were arranged in a pattern that would cause maximum damage while keeping the victim alive longer. "That's a mace from medieval Europe," Captain Rodriguez said, "around 800 years old." "And this?" Kalen switched to an image of a sword with a jagged saw-like edge. A flamberge sword. The wavy blade was designed to cause wounds that were harder to heal. Kalen displayed more images. Each weapon was designed not just to kill, but to terrorize and inflict prolonged suffering. There were arrows with barbed heads that could not be removed without surgery. There were spears with multiple points that would break off inside wounds. There were even siege weapons that threw dead animals diseased with plague into enemy cities. "What disturbs me," Kalen said, "is that these patterns continue throughout your entire history. Watch this." The display shifted to show weapons from different time periods. Ancient Greek fire that stuck to skin and burned underwater. Medieval torture, devices built into city defenses. Bullets designed to tumble and fragment inside the human body. Chemical weapons that caused blindness and choking. Nuclear weapons that poisoned the land for generations. Every time humans developed new technology, you used it to make suffering more efficient, Dr. Mira observed. Other species develop better ways to win conflicts quickly. Humans develop better ways to make enemies suffer. Captain Rodriguez shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "You have to understand the context. These weapons served strategic purposes." "Explain," Kalen said. Fear was a weapon itself. If an enemy army knew that capture meant torture, or that certain weapons would cause agonizing wounds, they might surrender without fighting. This saved lives on both sides. Commander Brooks spoke up. "Danny's right about the strategy, but we shouldn't ignore the reality. Humans have always been uniquely creative when it comes to inflicting pain." Kalen pulled up another set of data. "I have been studying the military development of 17 different galactic species. Would you like to see how their weapons evolved?" The display showed the progression of alien military technology. Each species started with simple tools like clubs and spears. As they developed better materials and energy sources, their weapons became more efficient at stopping enemies quickly. Some used energy beams that shut down nervous systems instantly. Others used fields that simply froze opponents in place. Notice the pattern, Kalen said. Every species moves toward cleaner, more efficient methods of ending conflicts. Except humans. What do you mean? Rodriguez asked. When humans discovered gunpowder, you could have made bullets that killed instantly and painlessly. Instead, you designed bullets that would wound in ways that caused maximum suffering. When you developed chemical weapons, you chose compounds that would cause slow, agonizing death rather than quick unconsciousness. Dr. Mira added more data to the display. We found records of human military leaders specifically rejecting weapons that were too efficient. There are documents where your generals complained that certain weapons ended battles too quickly. They wanted the enemy to suffer, Kalen continued. Not just to lose, but to suffer while losing. This is completely unique among galactic species. Captain Rodriguez tried to defend human tactics. You're looking at this wrong. The goal was psychological warfare. If you could break an enemy's will to fight, you could win without having to kill everyone. But why choose psychological methods based on fear and pain? Dr. Mira asked. Other species use confusion, distraction, or simple overwhelming force. Because humans understand fear and pain better than other emotions, Commander Brooks said, quietly. We know exactly how they work, because we experience them ourselves. Kalen felt another chill. You are saying that humans weaponized their own capacity for suffering? In a way, yes. We studied what hurt us most, then used that knowledge against our enemies. The alien scientist brought up another disturbing discovery. I found evidence that humans often tested their weapons on their own people first. Your species practiced torture techniques on prisoners to learn which methods were most effective. Rodriguez looked sick. Those were war crimes. Most humans condemn those actions. But you still did them, Kalen pointed out. And you used the knowledge gained from them. No other species has ever systematically studied how to cause maximum psychological damage. Dr. Mira displayed a chart showing human military spending throughout history. Look at this. Humans consistently spent more resources on weapons research than on defensive technology. You were always more interested in finding new ways to hurt enemies than in protecting yourselves. That's not entirely true, Brooks said. We developed armor and shields and medical technology. Yes, but look at the proportions, Kalen said. For every unit of resources spent on protection, humans spent 5 units on new methods of attack. Other species show the opposite pattern. The meeting continued for hours as they reviewed more evidence. They found records of human military academies where officers studied psychology specifically to learn how to break enemy morale. They discovered that humans had developed an entire academic field called psychological warfare that had no equivalent in any other galactic civilization. Most disturbing of all, they found evidence that humans had never really stopped developing these techniques. Even during their most peaceful periods, human military researchers continued to study fear, pain, and psychological manipulation. The conclusion is unavoidable, Kalen said as the meeting ended. Humans are the only known species that evolved to use empathy as a weapon. You understand suffering so well because you can experience it yourselves. This makes you uniquely capable of inflicting it on others. As the humans left the laboratory, Dr. Mira turned to Kalen. Do you think they can be trusted as members of the galactic community? Kalen was quiet for a long moment. I am beginning to think that is the wrong question. The right question might be whether the galactic community can survive having humans as members. That night, Kalen worked late, expanding his report. He was starting to realize that they were not just studying human military history. They were trying to understand a species that had turned the ability to cause suffering into an art form. Dr. Amy Carter walked into the research laboratory carrying a thick folder of psychological reports. She was a human psychologist who specialized in studying violent behavior, and her presence made the alien researchers nervous. Something about the way she observed everyone with calm, analytical eyes reminded them that humans studied each other the same way they studied their enemies. Thank you for agreeing to help us, Dr. Kalen Vorthak said. We need to understand why humans think differently about warfare than other species. Dr. Carter sat down and opened her folder. Before we begin, I want you to understand something important. What you're asking me to explain might be disturbing. Human psychology contains elements that most galactic species find difficult to accept. Dr. Mira Zelen leaned forward. We need to know the truth, regardless of how disturbing it might be. Very well, Dr. Carter said. She activated a portable holographic display that showed brain scans. These are images of human neural activity during different emotional states. Notice what happens when a human experiences pain. The brain scan showed activity in multiple regions simultaneously. Humans process physical pain, emotional distress, and empathetic responses in connected areas of the brain. When we see someone else suffering, we literally feel a reduced version of their pain. Captain Danny Rodriguez, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. That sounds like it would make humans less likely to hurt others, not more. Dr. Carter switched to a different brain scan. This is where it gets complicated. Look at this scan of a human soldier during combat training. Notice that the empathy regions are still active, but now they're working together with areas responsible for strategic thinking. Kalen studied the image carefully. You are saying that humans can feel empathy and still choose to cause suffering? Not just that, Dr. Carter replied. Humans can use their empathy to cause suffering more effectively. Because we understand pain so well, we know exactly how to inflict it for maximum impact. She pulled up historical records from human conflicts. Look at these examples. During your medieval period, humans developed torture techniques that were precisely calibrated to keep victims conscious and aware for as long as possible. They understood exactly how much pain a human body could endure before losing consciousness. Dr. Mira felt sick. They used their knowledge of their own bodies to hurt others more efficiently? Exactly. And it gets worse. Humans also learned to use psychological pain as effectively as physical pain. We studied fear, despair, and hopelessness the same way we studied anatomy. Dr. Carter displayed records of human psychological warfare techniques. Humans learned that sometimes the threat of torture was more effective than actual torture. They discovered that uncertainty and anticipation could break an enemy's will faster than immediate pain. This is what we do not understand, Kalen said. Other species fight to win. Humans seem to fight to break their enemies completely. That's because humans understand something that other species apparently do not, Dr. Carter explained. We know that physical defeat is temporary, but psychological defeat can be permanent. A broken spirit stays broken long after physical wounds heal. Commander Lisa Brooks, who had been listening silently, finally spoke. Amy, you're making us sound like monsters. I'm explaining why humans are effective at warfare, Dr. Carter replied calmly. The capacity for strategic cruelty is part of human nature. We can separate our emotional responses from our tactical thinking when necessary. She showed them brain scans from human military personnel. Look at these neural patterns. Human soldiers can feel sympathy for their enemies, while simultaneously planning the most effective ways to defeat them. This compartmentalization is apparently unique among galactic species. Dr. Mira asked, how is this possible? How can humans feel empathy and ignore it at the same time? Because humans evolved as both predators and prey, Dr. Carter explained. We spent millions of years hunting other animals while being hunted by larger predators. This created a species that understands vulnerability from both perspectives. She displayed evolutionary charts showing human development. Most species evolved as either hunters or prey animals. Humans were unique because we were small enough to be hunted by larger predators but smart enough to hunt other animals ourselves. This dual experience shaped how we think about conflict. Humans learned to think like their prey in order to hunt more effectively, Dr. Carter continued. At the same time, we learned to think like predators in order to avoid being hunted. This gave us an unusual ability to understand both sides of any conflict. Kalen was taking extensive notes. So humans can understand their enemies' fears because humans have experienced those same fears. Precisely. And because we understand fear so intimately, we know exactly how to weaponize it. Dr. Carter pulled up records of human military training programs. Look at how humans prepare for warfare. Other species focus on physical conditioning and tactical knowledge. Humans also study psychology, propaganda, and what they call hearts and minds operations. What does hearts and minds mean? Dr. Mira asked. It means winning by changing how people think and feel, not just by defeating them in battle, Captain Rodriguez explained. The idea is to make enemies want to surrender rather than forcing them to surrender. Dr. Carter nodded. Humans realized long ago that the most complete victory comes when your enemies defeat themselves. This requires understanding their psychology better than they understand it themselves. She showed them examples of human propaganda from various conflicts. Notice how sophisticated these psychological operations became. Humans learned to identify exactly what their enemies feared most, then created messages designed to amplify those fears. This is strategic empathy, Dr. Carter said. Humans use their ability to understand others' emotions as a weapon. We study our enemies' hopes, fears, and desires, then use that knowledge to manipulate their behavior. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Other species fought with strength, speed, or superior technology. Humans fought by understanding their enemies' minds better than the enemies understood themselves. Dr. Carter, Kalen said slowly, are you saying that human kindness and human cruelty come from the same source? That's exactly what I'm saying. Human empathy is a tool that can be used for healing or for harm. We understand suffering so well that we can either relieve it or inflict it with equal precision. As the meeting ended, Dr. Mira turned to Kalen with a worried expression. If humans can weaponize empathy itself, what else might they be capable of? Kalen did not answer, but he was already thinking about the same question. How could the galactic community defend against an enemy that understood their minds better than they did? Dr. Kalen Vorthak sat alone in his quarters reading the most disturbing report he had ever encountered. It was a human document titled Psychological Profiles of Non-Human Species, and it had been discovered in Commander Lisa Brooks's personal files during a routine security scan. The report contained detailed analysis of the fears, weaknesses, and psychological vulnerabilities of every species in the Galactic Council. The document was only 3 months old. Kalen read through entries about his own species with growing horror. The humans had identified that his people feared isolation above all else, and they had developed specific strategies for exploiting this fear. They knew that threatening to separate individuals from their social groups would be more effective than any physical torture. The report also contained psychological profiles of Dr. Mira Zellen's species. It noted their extreme sensitivity to certain sound frequencies and suggested using acoustic weapons that would cause panic rather than physical damage. The humans had even calculated the exact volume and pitch needed to trigger involuntary fear responses. When Kalen reached the section about the Galactic Council's leadership, he felt physically sick. The humans had studied the personal histories, family relationships, and individual fears of every major political figure in the galaxy. They knew which leaders could be intimidated, which could be bribed, and which would need to be eliminated if humans ever decided to take control. The next morning, Kalen called an emergency meeting with his research team. When Commander Brooks arrived, she found herself facing a room full of very frightened alien scientists. We found this in your personal files, Dr. Mira said, displaying the psychological profiles report. Care to explain why humans have been studying our weaknesses? Brooks looked at the document without any sign of surprise or guilt. Standard intelligence gathering. Every species does this. No, Kalen said firmly. Every species gathers information about military capabilities and political structures. Only humans study psychological vulnerabilities in this level of detail. Dr. Amy Carter, who had been invited to this meeting, examined the report with professional interest. This is very thorough work. Whoever compiled these profiles has a deep understanding of xenopsychology. The question is why, Dr. Mira said. Why do humans need to know exactly how to break every species in the galaxy? Brooks was quiet for a moment. Because knowledge is power. The more we understand about other species, the better we can work with them. Or manipulate them, Kalen said. Same thing, really, Brooks replied with a slight smile that made everyone in the room uncomfortable. Captain Danny Rodriguez arrived late to the meeting and immediately sensed the tension. What's going on? Dr. Carter showed him the psychological profiles. It appears humans have been conducting intelligence operations against the entire Galactic Council. Rodriguez read through some of the entries and winced. This looks like the work of our xenopsychology division. They're supposed to help with diplomatic relations. Diplomatic relations? Dr. Mira asked. This document contains specific instructions for causing psychological breakdowns in alien species. Look at Section 12, Kalen said. It describes how to use family bonds against the Centauri delegation, and Section 18 explains how to exploit the Andromedan fear of confined spaces. Brooks finally spoke up. You're all overreacting. This information helps us avoid accidentally offending other species. If we know what frightens you, we can avoid triggering those responses. Or you can trigger them deliberately when it serves your purposes, Dr. Carter observed. The same knowledge that prevents accidental offense can be used to cause intentional psychological damage. Kalen displayed more evidence on the holographic projector. We have found similar reports dating back to humanity's first contact with galactic civilization. You have been studying us from the beginning. The evidence was overwhelming. Humans had infiltrated cultural exchange programs, scientific collaborations, and diplomatic missions for the sole purpose of gathering psychological intelligence. They had learned to speak alien languages perfectly, not just to communicate, but to understand which words and phrases would have the strongest emotional impact. Most disturbing of all, Dr. Mira said, we found evidence that humans have been testing their psychological warfare techniques on us without our knowledge. She displayed records of seemingly innocent conversations between humans and aliens over the past year. When analyzed carefully, the conversations showed patterns of subtle manipulation. Humans had been experimenting with different approaches to influence alien behavior and recording the results. You used us as test subjects, Kalen said. We prefer to think of it as social research, Brooks replied. Captain Rodriguez looked genuinely shocked. Lisa, please tell me you haven't been running psychological experiments on our allies. Not experiments exactly. More like field testing of communication strategies. Dr. Carter examined the conversation records with professional fascination. This is remarkably sophisticated work. The humans identified specific psychological triggers for each species and then tested different ways to activate those triggers through normal conversation. What was the purpose of these tests? Dr. Mira asked. To learn how to get what we want without having to use force, Brooks said. Isn't that better than violence? You are missing the point, Kalen said. The fact that you can manipulate us without us knowing it means we can never trust any interaction with humans. How do we know when you are being genuine and when you are manipulating us? Brooks looked confused by the question. Does it matter? If the manipulation makes you happy and gets us what we need, isn't that a win for everyone? The room fell silent. The other species were beginning to understand that humans thought about relationships in fundamentally different ways. For humans, manipulation was just another form of communication. Dr. Carter spoke carefully. I think what my colleagues are trying to say is that most species prefer honest interaction, even if it's less efficient. But why would you choose less efficient communication? Brooks asked. If we can achieve better outcomes through strategic conversation, isn't that objectively superior? Dr. Mira stood up abruptly. Because some things are more important than efficiency. Trust, honesty, respect for others' autonomy. Those are nice ideals, Brooks said. But they don't change the fact that humans are naturally better at getting what they want through social manipulation. We evolved these skills for survival. We can't just turn them off. As the meeting ended, Kalen realized that they had discovered something more frightening than human weapons. They had found evidence that humans viewed every social interaction as a form of warfare. Even when they were being friendly, Humans were studying their allies for weaknesses and testing methods of control. That night, Kalen worked late on his report. He was beginning to understand that the real danger humans posed was not their weapons or their cruelty. It was their ability to make other species like and trust them while secretly learning how to control them. The most terrifying realization was that humans probably did not even see this as deception. To them, studying psychological weaknesses and testing manipulation techniques was just normal social behavior. They could not understand why other species would object to being controlled as long as the control was gentle and effective. Kalen titled this section of his report, "The Weaponization of Friendship." He suspected it would be the most disturbing part of his entire analysis. Dr. Kalen Vorthak finished typing the last sentence of his report and sat back in his chair. After weeks of investigation, he had documented the most disturbing discovery in galactic history. Humans were not just another species seeking membership in the Galactic Council. They were psychological predators who had evolved to weaponize empathy itself. His report contained over 300 pages of evidence proving that humans represented an existential threat to every other species in the galaxy. The document recommended immediate quarantine of human space and careful monitoring of all humans currently within the galactic community. Computer, seal this document with maximum security protocols, Kalen said. Classification level Alpha Prime. Access restricted to Galactic Council leadership only. Document sealed, the computer replied. Preparing for transmission to Council headquarters. Kalen felt a mixture of relief and dread as he prepared to send the report. Once the Council leadership read his findings, everything would change. The humans' application for full membership would be rejected, and they would likely be expelled from galactic civilization entirely. The next morning, Kalen received an urgent message to report to the Council chambers immediately. He arrived to find the 5 most powerful leaders in the galaxy seated around a circular table. Their expressions were grim. "Dr. Vorthak," said Chancellor Morvek, the head of the Galactic Council, "we have reviewed your report. Your findings are disturbing." "Thank you, Chancellor. I believe the evidence clearly shows that humans pose a significant threat to galactic security." "Indeed," said Admiral Zentara, the military representative. "The question is what we should do about it." Kalen was surprised by the question. Surely the answer is obvious. We must restrict human access to the galactic community until we can develop defenses against their psychological manipulation techniques. The Council leaders exchanged glances. Chancellor Morvek spoke carefully. "Dr. Vorthak, before we make any decisions, there is something you need to know. We have discovered that your investigation was being monitored from the beginning." "Monitored? By whom?" "By humans," Admiral Zentara said. "They have been aware of your research since the first day." Kalen felt cold. "That's impossible. We used the highest security protocols. Security protocols that were designed by a committee that included human advisors," Chancellor Morvek explained. "It appears that humans have been involved in our security systems from the very beginning." Dr. Mira Zelen was brought into the chamber. She looked frightened and confused. "Kalen, they're saying that Commander Brooks knew everything we were doing. She was reporting our progress to human intelligence agencies throughout the entire investigation. But that means..." Kalen's mind raced through the implications. If they knew we were studying them, then everything they showed us was deliberate. They wanted us to discover their psychological warfare capabilities. "Precisely," said a familiar voice from the chamber entrance. Commander Lisa Brooks walked in, but she was no longer wearing a liaison officer's uniform. Instead, she wore the insignia of a human intelligence operative. "Dr. Vorthak," Brooks said with a smile. "Thank you for your excellent work. Your report has served its purpose perfectly." "What purpose?" Kalen demanded. "Demonstrating human capabilities to the Galactic Council leadership without making direct threats," Brooks explained. "We needed you to understand what humans are capable of, but we couldn't simply tell you. That would have been seen as aggressive. Instead, we let you discover it yourself through scientific investigation." Chancellor Morvek looked tired. "Commander, Brooks, please explain the situation to Dr. Vorthak." Brooks activated a holographic display showing the current political structure of the galaxy. Humans have been present in galactic civilization for 15 years. During that time, we have carefully placed our people in key positions throughout the government, military, and scientific institutions. The display highlighted dozens of positions occupied by humans or human allies. Kalen was shocked to see how deeply humans had infiltrated galactic society. We now hold sufficient influence to ensure that any decisions regarding humanity will be made with our input, Brooks continued. Your report, Dr. Vorthak, has simply made this influence explicit. You're threatening the Council, Dr. Mira said. Not threatening, Brooks corrected. Demonstrating. There's a difference. A threat implies that we might cause harm if our demands are not met. A demonstration shows that we are already in a position to cause harm, but choose not to. Admiral Zentara spoke up. Commander Brooks has made it clear that any attempt to restrict human activities will result in the activation of various contingency plans. Plans that could destabilize galactic civilization. Kalen stared at the council leaders. You're going to give in to them? We're going to acknowledge reality, Chancellor Morvek said. Humans are already integrated into our society at every level. Attempting to remove them now would cause more damage than allowing them to remain. Dr. Amy Carter entered the chamber, still wearing her psychologist credentials. Dr. Vorthak, I want you to understand something important. Humans don't want to harm galactic civilization. We want to improve it. By controlling it, Kalen said bitterly. By guiding it toward more efficient outcomes, Carter corrected. Human psychological techniques can be used to reduce conflict, increase cooperation, and create more stable societies. The same skills that make us dangerous also make us valuable allies. Brooks nodded. Consider this, Dr. Vorthak. Since humans joined the galactic community, how many wars have there been between member species? Kalen thought about it. None. But that could be coincidence. Or it could be the result of careful human intervention, Brooks suggested. We've been quietly mediating disputes, managing personalities, and preventing conflicts before they could escalate. Your 15-year period of galactic peace is not a coincidence. Chancellor Morvek stood up. Dr. Vorthak, your report will remain classified at the highest levels. The information it contains is too dangerous to release publicly. You're covering this up to prevent panic, Kalen realized. We're managing the information to maintain stability, the Chancellor corrected. If the general population learned about human psychological capabilities, it would create fear and distrust that could tear apart galactic civilization. Admiral Zentara added, the irony is that your report itself has become a weapon. Its mere existence demonstrates human power more effectively than any direct threat could. As the meeting ended, Kalen found himself alone with Commander Brooks. How long have you been planning this? He asked. Since before we applied for council membership, Brooks admitted. Humans learned long ago that the best way to conquer an enemy is to make them want to be conquered. We've simply applied that principle to galactic politics. And if we had refused to accept human membership? Brooks smiled. Then you would have discovered that many of your most trusted advisors, scientists, and military officers were actually working for human intelligence. The choice was never really yours to make. That night, Kalen sat in his quarters looking at his sealed report. The document that was supposed to expose the human threat had instead become the instrument of human victory by demonstrating their capabilities through scientific investigation rather than direct confrontation. Humans had achieved complete psychological dominance over the galactic community. The most terrifying part was that Kalen was no longer sure whether human control was a bad thing. They had brought peace to the galaxy, and they seemed genuinely committed to improving life for all species. Perhaps being controlled by benevolent psychological predators was better than the chaos of truly free civilization. As he prepared for sleep, Kalen realized that he might already be thinking exactly what the humans wanted him to think, and the worst part was that he could not tell the difference anymore between his own thoughts and their manipulation. The secret report would remain secret, not because it was too dangerous to reveal, but because revealing it would serve no purpose. The humans had already won their greatest victory by making everyone else grateful to be conquered.